6 of the top 16 teams in college basketball lost less than 24 hours after the selection committee's reveal on Saturday, folks. That is a clear sign that March is just around the corner.
Welcome in to Locked On College Basketball Squad Show, your go-to spot for everything happening on the hardwood, from blue blood battles to bracket busters and everything in between. Join the squad of hoops junkies as we break down the biggest stories with the boldest takes and unfiltered opinions. Because here, we don't hold back. It's the College Basketball Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks, and welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Squad Show. I am your host, Andy Patton, joined today by actual hosts not from the Big 12. It feels like it's been just about the Big 12 the last couple of weeks, but we got a handful of people from all different conferences here. Want to thank all of you for listening to this show and making it your first listen of the day. I swear I can talk. We're going to get there in just a second, folks. Today's episode brought to you by Mazda. Wins define the moment, but putting in the work, that is what defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. 6 of the 16 teams in the selection committee's reveal on Saturday morning lost pretty much immediately afterwards. Kansas, literally 2 hours later, they made up for it. Today, though, we're going to talk about all of those losses. We're going to talk about the new AP Top 5 and some big-time wins for some programs, what it might mean for Duke and UConn and Arizona. Also, we had a phenomenal couple of games on Big Monday. We saw Kansas take down Houston at home. We saw a big win for North Carolina as well. We're going to talk about that. And then, folks, Charles Bediako is back in the news again. He's trying it one more time. Is it going to work? We'll talk about that to close out the show. But first, folks, top 16 reveal on Saturday. For those who don't know, this is kind of the first kind of inclination that March is here. It is the selection committee gets together. They show us here is, as of right now, this snapshot in time, who would be the top 4 seeds in the NCAA tournament. And it's very important that they label it that way because, as we saw on Saturday, a lot of those teams lost and probably moved themselves back down a seed or 2 in some cases. So we're going to talk about that. We saw Michigan lose to Duke. We saw Iowa State lose to BYU, Houston lose to Arizona, and of course also lose to Kansas tonight. Illinois lost to UCLA. What up, Yox? Thanks for being here. We saw Kansas lose to Cincy, but then of course turn around and beat Houston. And then Vanderbilt lost to Tennessee. And I want to start at the very top of this because we saw Duke obviously get this major win over Michigan, which, first of all, incredible non-conference games. We love seeing that in February, folks. That was fantastic basketball game, high level for a full 40 minutes. But JJ, you see Duke move back up to move to number 1 for the first time this year. How you feeling about being at the top of the mountain right now in late February?
Feeling sky high, guys. I can't lie. Feeling great. It's such a gauntlet of a non-conference schedule that Duke put together going into the season. And if you would have said out of all those games, there was just one loss that Duke would have there, it'd be hard to believe you, just given some of the young guys that are on the team. You think about having to go through the likes of Michigan and Michigan State and their building, Arkansas, Kansas, Florida in the ACC SEC Challenge. There were so many unbelievable tests that Duke had in non-conference play throughout the year. And as Coach Shire started a season ago, putting these February non-con games in neutral site settings to get your team back in the mindset. This year, they even took it a step further, fellas, and they made sure to use the Wilson NCAA Tournament basketballs to make sure they could get into the rhythm of playing there. Duke's hoping to be the 1 seed in the East region that's going to go through Capital One Arena there. I loved every second of Saturday, and not to mention just the absolute defensive showing that we have seen from Duke as of late. I mean, teams are finding it really difficult to score on this Duke team.
What stood out to me about this for Duke is we saw, again, you mentioned the electric defense, but Cameron Boozer has now played against probably the 2 best front courts in college basketball in Florida and Michigan, and he had excellent games in both of them. It was just incredible. And as you know, all of you guys, I love Nick Hamenia. I absolutely love. I wanted him at Gonzaga desperately. He ended up spurning the Zags, spurning UCLA.
I was about to say something there, Andy. Hey.
Yeah, I thought you might. Because it was a little bit it was frustrating and also a little bit, I was happy and also a little sad to see him have such a great game against Michigan. That kid's really coming into his own. And we'll talk more about some of the freshmen in general later in the show, because some of them really shine and some of them not so much. But man, Duke and Shire found a way to get that kid playing really good basketball at the right time for them.
Without a doubt. I mean, his contributions were much needed, really helped Duke down the stretch. I thought what Caleb Foster did, his experience, that's kind of been the spotlight. I know Leaf loves to recognize, when Caleb Foster is doing anything on the court, more times than not, contradicting or, being critical of my man, Cephas. So glad he stepped up to the table in some stretches. Slim Evans made plays. But I wanted to put something out there about Cam Boozer, because last year Duke had this big conversation where it felt like Cooper Flagg was going to switch or win every major award. And Janai Broome wanted to be a part of that conversation, and deservedly so. This year, the conversation has always been who's going to be the number one pick between these top three freshmen and whatnot, not so much who's the national player of the year. So after performances like this, I mean, are we done? Are we sealed? Is Cam Boozer clearly the pick to be the best player of the year, guys? I'm already.
Oh, yeah, he's the national player of the year by a mile.
Good.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think it's close.
But it's such a big argument back and forth. Top number one overall pick, and yet those same three people, team success is something, and they're not really a part of all of those National Player of the Year award conversations.
I think the team success, I think DeBonce has been fantastic all year, and that's obviously where the draft pick stuff comes in. But the team success, I mean, DeBonce is not doing in the wins, right? Like they're just not winning the same amount of games. I think that's the biggest separator. I mean, the number one pick thing is very separate to me, frankly. Whereas like Cooper, I think had that locked up. Like no one was going to take a Janai Broome over a Cooper Flagg a year ago, right? That wasn't going to happen. So it's just a little bit different year in that sense.
Well, Andy's going to give us a FanDuel read in a little bit, but I'll give us an early one right now. Cam Boozer minus 20,000 to win this award.
Let's go.
AJ DeBanta is plus 2,000. Everybody else is plus 10,000 or greater. So, I mean, it's like,
thanks for the help, Isaac. I like it.
What a runaway this is. Speaking of which, I was laughing. So on today's Locked On College Basketball show, there was, I'm assuming it's a Duke supporter that said, so funny how poor Isaac had to talk about the Duke-Michigan game. Not sure he said anything positive. Give credit to Andy Patton for helping him out. And the answer, yes, Duke is the number one team in the country. And I think that's where we got to get to next.
What I liked talking about in that game was we were pretty focused on Michigan's backcourt not being very good, and we needed to focus on like all of Michigan's backcourt wasn't very good. It was easy to focus on Elliot Cadeau specifically not being very good for Michigan. Yeah. But I was like, well, Namari Burnett wasn't good either, and they had some issues. Again, credit to Duke's defense in that game for a lot of it. But I also want to talk about the fact, I mean, AP poll doesn't really matter. It's late February. The AP poll is kind of irrelevant. And really this year, it kind of feels like being the number one overall seed versus being like the second, third, or fourth one seed. Everybody kind of has their own preference, and I'm not sure it's going to change all that much, but I was a little, maybe not surprised. It made sense to me that Duke jumped to number one and that Arizona jumped back to number two. But we also kind of thought that Arizona maybe fell too far after their loss last week. Leaf, I'll go to you. Did you think that, were you surprised that Duke was still number one and Arizona was only up to number two after their win, or did you kind of think that that's what was going to happen?
Well, considering they were ahead and then beat Michigan, I expected Duke to be number one in the AP. But I was surprised by how there was no discussion of Arizona being the third ranked in the bracket reveal. Because if you look at the best wins in the country, it's by far Arizona. They have three top three wins. Like that's not even close. They have beaten Florida away from home. They went to UConn and beat UConn. And then they went to Houston and beat Houston without Koa Pete, without Dwayne Aristotle in those games. So, like, I think the discussion about current form was really interesting because they punished Texas Tech for losing JT Toppin. North Carolina would have been, a fringe contender for a 4 seed, and they didn't have any contention because Caleb Wilson's out for the time being. So Koa Pete being out moved them to third overall, and there was no discussion of how their resume at that point, because that was prior to Arizona beating Houston and prior to Duke beating Michigan, that their resumes were identical as just current form because they had lost 2 of the last 3 at that point. without Koa Pete being right. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I told you guys all on here, I think Koa Pete's been hurt for about 3 weeks. And then finally they revealed it. And so I think it's really interesting because I have no qualms with Duke being number 1 in the AP, but I do think it's not necessarily fully representative of the entire season that Arizona wasn't at least discussed as being ahead of Duke, because if you were to look at best wins, which is what Keith Gill, the guy, talked about nonstop, they have the best 3 wins in the country by far.
Well, I want to welcome in Derek Johnson, who's joining us. Isaac, did you get him in? Okay. Derek's here after that Kansas win. We're going to talk so much. We're going to talk so much about this Kansas win over Houston in a second, but I want to make sure I hit this talking point, because I'm not sure anybody had a better day on Saturday in terms of moving up than UConn, because UConn comes in the top 16 reveal. They're the 2 seed. They're in a good spot there. We kind of weren't surprised that they weren't that 1 seed after that loss to Creighton, but then they see teams right in front of them both lose. So Matt, I'm curious how you're feeling about UConn right now, obviously coming off of that Creighton loss, but they go get that win at Villanova. Now they have St. John's coming up, but other than that, it's not a super difficult schedule. Kind of how are you feeling about UConn's chances of being on that 1 line when Selection Sunday rolls around?
Yeah, I don't think it will be a surprise for sure. And listen, I think when we saw the seedings come out on Saturday, UConn being the top 2 seed, I think you like, if you're a UConn fan, where they're positioned in that bracket, so to speak, in the South. But yeah, I think UConn recovered nicely coming off that Creighton win, up 21 points in the second half at Villanova in front of 21,000. And Villanova's losses all against ranked teams, and they also lost to Creighton, who was also showed strongly in the Big East at times. So despite their overall record, I think Dan Hurley's been looking for this team to come out in two key areas: improved defense, rebounding. Won the rebounding margin at Villanova by 13. And then on the defensive end, really shut down Villanova. And it was a very good showing for this team. They got the offense going across the board. I think you had 7 guys scored between 8 and 12 points, shared the rock, showed their depth, and I think Darren Hurley came away very satisfied with his win. Nice response coming off that loss against Creighton.
Speaking of being satisfied with wins, I think we're going to move on and we're going to talk about Isaac and Derek's 2 teams getting big-time wins on Big Monday. The Blue Bloods prevailed.
I gotta know, Andy, I got to know who the 4th 1 seed is going to be before we get out of here, because it's
tell us who you think it's going to be.
Well, because here's my thing. It's like Duke, Michigan, Arizona. I feel like they're pretty locked in unless something devastating happens to those top 3 lines, right? But it's like, I feel like it could be Matt's UConn team. I don't know. Like, has Houston slid too far at this point? Can they get back? Florida all of a sudden coming on strong. Like, there's just a couple teams like Iowa State. I know they just took that loss, but I mean, they were sitting there, plenty of big chances in the Big 12. I just, like, that to me feels like it's going to be the most intriguing top line conversation here.
Was anyone else
see how
shocked
Wednesday
that
goes?
UConn was as high as they were, considering they're 10th in the net?
No,
because that shocked. No,
because net is a sorting tool, not a ranking tool. So no,
I agree. But if you were to look at their wins, they have a few good ones that have, in Florida's case, is strengthened, and Kansas's case is strengthened. But UConn, to me, was the shocker of being a 1 over Houston at that point. And Iowa State, obviously there would have been Iowa State, but or Houston. Iowa State beat Houston. But if you look at it, they were ahead of teams that have been playing better basketball to that juncture than UConn. If you look at Houston before losing to Arizona and Kansas, which at the time of the reveal, that was the case, you would probably tell them, most people would say Houston was ranked higher and they were playing better basketball. The Keith Gill said, their best 3 wins weren't as good. That's fine with me, but they have a chance to strengthen theirs. And UConn was ranked higher than them, and only did it take a scrubbing, as he said, like 1,000 times the word scrubbing, that UConn fell. And UConn fell because they lost to Creighton the day before that reveal had been made. So I thought UConn was positioned ahead of both the Big 12 schools prior. If they hadn't lost to Creighton, they would have been the 1, even before Houston and Iowa State had lost extra games. So I was pretty surprised by that.
To me, I think the fact that UConn, I mean, there's something to be said for not having a lot of losses. And obviously, UConn having this Creighton loss is a bit of a black mark on their record. Matt and I can celebrate together being the two teams in the top 10 that have quad 3 losses. Although quad 3 losses not exactly created equal. Portland is hanging on by a thread to not be a quad 4 loss for my Zags. They're not in this 1 seed conversation for that reason. But yeah, I think for UConn, I mean, great wins. I think their wins are at least comparable. Illinois, Kansas, Florida. I mean, a lot of great wins. And then it's just the lack of losses that I think for me would push them over the top. With the caveat being, of course, that the Big East is not as strong as the Big 12 and that they're not able to pick up as many quality wins in conference play. They need to beat St. John's in their next game on Wednesday. If they do that, I think that they're in a good spot to be in that 1 seed conversation. But again, the other teams have better chances to get good wins as well. So that's where it's going to be interesting.
What happens when the conference tournaments happen, right? You have a lot of Big 12, Big 10, SEC, Big East. Do you think the conference tournaments might actually make a play heading into that selection Sunday if this team wins, and which conference might be able to stack more wins? You might say that might lead to the Big 12 team getting that 4th 1 seed.
It's weird though, because I feel like in recent years they've devalued it. Like, how many years have we seen like, oh, well, that probably boosted them up a line, and then it didn't. But to your point, like, you would think if there's going to be some resume boosters, like imagine a Big 12 semifinals where the top 4 seeds actually all make it. Like, that's going to be incredible.
And I think that's the thing is it's like I feel like those, especially the SEC and the Big 10 ones that happen right before the selection show doesn't matter all that much. But if we're talking about the nitty gritty of who's that 4th 1 seed or the order of the top 4, then that's where I wonder if it comes in and actually makes a difference. But yeah, we'll find out on Selection Sunday.
Okay, well, now let's get now let's get to those wins. Obviously, we talked again, North Carolina beating Louisville, Kansas beating Houston. We got a host for 3 of those 4 shows. So we're going to talk about those games and what they might mean for those teams coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. This is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. And how about Seth Trimble, huh? What an incredible performance for him on Monday night. He thought about leaving North Carolina. He returns to the school. He hurts his wrist early in the year. He drills that epic 3 against Duke a few weeks ago, and then he doesn't make another 3 until this game against Louisville. Hangs 30 on the cards. Massive win for North Carolina. And that's what reminds us what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work that goes in off the court. It's dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire and that grittiness that we saw from Trimble on Monday. Mazda puts that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there, that's what makes it count. There's more to a Mazda, folks, because there's more to you. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, if you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. And if you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock that in. I love futures at this time of year. Whether it's picking a team to win a championship or grab a conference title, it adds that extra layer of excitement to each and every game down the stretch. And now, not only could your pick net you some cash, it could also send you to the finals. Lots of great games on Tuesday. Texas Tech, 6.5-point favorites, hosting Cincinnati on Tuesday. We'll see if Wes Miller's team got a little more magic in them after that win over Kansas. So, folks, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, folks, want to thank all of you for making the Locked On College Basketball Squad Show your first listen or your first watch of the day. And, of course, those of you for hanging out with us live here as we record this on Monday night. Kansas coming off of a massive, massive win over Houston. Bill Self's team has never lost at home on a big Monday, 41-0, which just the fact that they have had 41 home big Monday games is unbelievable. 7-0 win coming off of a loss this year. Derek, what an extraordinary game defensively in particular from this Jayhawks team.
Oh, Derek,
you got muted.
We got you muted, DJ.
Oh no!
There you
You're
go.
trying
Just
to
speechless.
quiet the yeah. Just an unbelievable performance. I didn't know what to say. No, even more incredible stats. Like Bill Self is, I think, now 16-0 against top 10 teams who are ranked higher than him at home. Which that one's nuts too. I think they've never lost back-to-back home games under Bill Self. But yeah, I mean, this was to me, it was about a couple of things. I mean, one, Trey White was awesome. Like that's a big part of it. But I think this was about the defense, right? Houston only going 32% from the floor. And then it was about the defensive rebounding, which is funny because Houston still grabbed 13 offensive rebounds, but it actually was the third worst rebounding game for Houston on the offensive glass if you look at offensive rebound rate. In a game about 32%, they could have easily grabbed 20 offensive rebounds. So I think the defensive glass for KU wound up kind of coming through in a big way, and typically can be a way that Houston beats you even when they're not shooting well. So this wound up being huge after that Cincinnati loss on Saturday, that's for sure.
Parker, one of the things that Kelvin Sampson said earlier this year was that he doesn't really like having teams with freshmen on them. Like he doesn't really like playing freshmen. He doesn't really like to have that youth. And while it's certainly not that Kingston Flemings was bad in this game, Chris Senack, they had their moments, but I wonder if when you're in a lull like this, it's late February, this is a time of year where a lot of younger players tend to struggle. This is a really common thing. And I wonder if a system that's requires as much from you physically as Houston's system, and a coach who's maybe not as experienced or as willing to coach freshmen. Like, I'm curious if you think that played a role. I mean, you look at Kansas, obviously they have a lot of young players, but the best player in this game was one of the oldest guys on the floor in Trey White. And it certainly felt like that was a notable thing that happened in this game.
Yeah, and I go back and forth there, Andy, because also on the same token, Emmanuel Sharp was 1 of 10 from the field. Miles Uzan had just 7 points, and JoJo Tugler plays limited minutes in the first half, has 4 points himself because of his own foul. So yes, that's also 3 starters off last year's national championship team that are not necessarily playing up to snuff either, right? Like a champion runner-up team, right? And so I think that at some point you have to go like Kingston's the only guy in double figures. They're missing a lot of things offensively. In my post-game breakdown, I'm sure Derek, and I don't mean this to slight Derek's group or Leaf because they also beat us on Saturday. This strikes me as a lot more about Houston's offensive issues. It's consistent enough at this point. In the Jamal Shed year, they kind of got away without having dynamic low post scoring by just saying Shed's going to attack the rim. And it kind of felt like earlier this year, there's going to be the same thing with Kingston. And the last month, that hasn't really been, defense rotating over and they can't punish it. And really, as much as it'd be great to kind of have a low post score, the truth is last year that Juwan Roberts, a great skip pass guy out of the low block too, right? He was a great facilitator, offensive hub out of that low block, and they're not getting anything inside the lowest circle of the shot chart. And it no easy basket means you shoot 32%, you shoot 36% on Saturday, you shoot 40% last week. I mean, these just aren't. This just feels like a trend. It's 3 tough opponents too, but it's a trend in the wrong direction.
I wonder if that's the common denominator. I mean, maybe Iowa State in general just has a good defense. I can't think of an individual elite rim protector, but when you look at Arizona, when you're talking about the elite rim protection, and you look at Kansas, when you're talking, Flory and Tiller has 3 blocks in this game. Maybe that's the Achilles heel this year for Houston. If you're playing a team who does have that elite rim protector inside, is that kind of the issue?
Well, it certainly seems to be so. Kingston's got a decent little mid-range pull-up or whatever, right? It does seem to be though when he is not inside the charge circle, Houston's got problems because Miles Season's also not getting there, Emmanuel Sharp's also not getting there, and then Senack is a stretch 4, and Tugler's not an offensive player really. They're just not getting any baskets inside that circle. Whereas it felt like for the first 2 months of the season, I mean, we saw Kingston get 42 against Tech doing it, right? Attacking the rim, it was the way it was going to go. And they had JT Toppin, so maybe, I guess he's not quite Badunga or the defensive force. He's more of an offensive guy, but it still feels like there's just something missing inside. And again, I should probably say, I'm not – Kansas played great tonight, and Arizona played great on Saturday. I don't mean that in a way that slights any of that. It does feel like there's a trend happening with Houston too here that's worrisome.
A question for you, Parker, would be, are you at all concerned at the Milos Uzan? That guy played point guard last year, and it was a big adjustment, and Cryer's job was to score, and he was a 3rd-team All-American. This year, the ball's in Kingston Fleming's hands, And from my perspective, I watched plenty of Houston, but I watched it very closely against Arizona the other day, is he looks like a fish out of water without the basketball. And he's not a catch and shoot guy. He actually hit 3 threes. But if Arizona is making the game plan abundantly clear, like load up, gap the wings, and make Kingston Flemings pass the ball. And Kingston went 6 of 17 in that game. I don't know what he finished tonight, but he started.
He was 6 of 18. He was 6 of 18.
Yeah. So basically the same strategy. Arizona and Kansas played very similar coverages on Kingston. And they said, okay, Emmanuel Sharp has to catch. He's got that low release, and you just fly out and try to contest his shot. And then same thing with Uzan. Uzan's not like a pure sharpshooter. Can he shoot? Absolutely. But he'd rather have the ball in his hands. Are you at all concerned that the guards, though Kingston is spectacular, should be an All-American? Are you concerned that your guards are kind of being hurt by the heliocentric nature that Kingston Flemings has the ball in his hands all the time?
Well, except that I don't know that they have a whole lot of other option, right? That'd be great if there were another way to go about it, but you can't invert Kingston and Milos and like say take turns attacking out of it, because Kingston's not the catch and shoot threat. He's not the 3-point shooting threat, right? On the inverse of that. And I really think, honestly, part of the deal was in the earliest part of the year is when this thing was really clicking again, like I mentioned, Tech or BYU or Arkansas or the wins they had early on, it felt like Kingston would attack and they'd collapse, he'd kick, the next guy would attack. Now we're doing a lot of catch and shoot on the second one. And then like tonight we didn't even get to lane a whole lot. So I feel like there's other things happening there too. But I do think the rim protector thing may be sliding over. And then gap protection is really, I think, ultimately just keeping him out of the lane, right? And forcing, if Emmanuel Sharp's going to hit 4 threes, we'll adjust. But tonight he didn't. Saturday he didn't, right? It was Milos, but that also didn't work out. So it's all stemming from a lot of different things, but there's no easy basket. And, at some point you got to find a way where, hey, they're on an 8-0 run. We got to get easy baskets, slow this thing down. And that's the way that goes sometimes.
Derek, do you think, so Kansas was on the 3 line, then they take that loss to Cincinnati, and there's a whole bunch of conversation about one of the worst losses in the Bill Self era, et cetera, et cetera. Then they turn around and do this. Like, are we evening out? Is Kansas trending towards a 2 line? Obviously, with Illinois taking a loss, now Houston's got a couple losses in a row. Like, where do you kind of, in your mind, where do you think Kansas ends up landing, knowing that they have a huge game coming up this week as well?
Yeah, well, I guess looking back now, shout out at ODJ Hoops, who pointed this out earlier. Duke, Michigan, and Cincinnati are the only 3 teams to be top 16 in efficiency on offense and defense the past 2.5 weeks. So maybe Cincinnati's just a juggernaut now. That's actually a good loss now. No, but it is going to be interesting because when you look at the resume stuff, I think I was looking at it. KU is now top 5 or tied top 5 in quad 1 wins. They're 1 win behind Duke in terms of, and tied with, I think, 1 or 2 other schools for quad 1A wins now. And here's what could be a potential differentiator just from the seeding of Big 12 teams, right? They only play Texas Tech once. Now, again, you could play some of these teams again in the Big 12 tournament, but they beat them. They only play BYU once. They beat them. They only play Houston once. They beat them. Now, the Arizona and Iowa State ones, those are home and home games. And obviously we have the return trip to Arizona coming up on Saturday, which will be really fun. But that also means that Kansas is the only team currently in the Big 12 who has beaten the other, if you look at those as being the top 6 with Kansas, that has beaten the other 5 teams and has all 5 of those wins on their resume. So I do think from that standpoint, they're sitting in good position. And to me, it's not just about, can you get, a 3 or 2 seed? I think this year there's more importance to get a 2 or 3 seed because you want to avoid that 4 line with how many good 1 seeds there are. But also it's going to be interesting to monitor and track Illinois and Iowa State compared to Kansas from kind of a battle of who's going to get St. Louis.
Yeah. Let's talk about this other game. ACC, Louisville, North Carolina. Isaac, obviously a fantastic win for your team. No Caleb Wilson, no problem. We got Henry Vasar back, and he wasn't like super impactful offensively in this game, but obviously his presence defensively is very significant for the Tar Heels. Really, it was the Seth Trimble show, goes out career high 30 for him in this game. We've been kind of needing that guard rotation to step up offensively. What did you love about this team's win and kind of the spot that it's put this team in now with a couple games left in the ACC?
There's a couple things to it. Like at the big picture level, Carolina is now 3-1 in their games without Caleb Wilson, but the other 2 wins were at Syracuse and home to Pitt. And so they hadn't really shown a capability to beat anybody of note. And so I think probably the biggest takeaway for the Tar Heels out of this is, hey, selection committee, even if Caleb Wilson struggles to come back or he can't, whatever it is, we can still knock off a top 25 team in the nation, albeit, of course, it was at home where Carolina is now 16-0. But I think that was important. And then the other thing is that Carolina has struggled a lot this year with elite guards and with giving up threes. And guess what? Louisville does really, 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 really well. And the way this game started, the Tar Heels struggled with their defensive capability. They were going under screen, all this stuff that you cannot do against Louisville. And then it just locked in. And so what I loved was, yes, Seth Trimble's 30 points, but more importantly, he held Michael Brown Jr. to 24 points. But I say it that way because it took him 25 shots to get there. I can live with that all day long. And so Isaac McNeely, 0 of 5 in this game. Ryan Conwell, 23 points, but he needed 19 shots to get there. And so it was like, yes, 2 of those 3 went off, but so inefficient. And you can totally live with that.
Look
yeah,
at
it was very impressive.
Go ahead, JJ.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, it was nice to see Seth Trimble hit a 3-pointer because, he hasn't done one of those since a pretty big one at the end of a particular rivalry game. And, to beat Louisville, that had a lot of expectations going into the season. Yeah, certainly impressed. And I'm excited to see kind of the final stretch. We're having these big picture conversations about the ACC, and North Carolina is certainly in that conversation. Duke's been in that conversation. Louisville was there at the beginning of the year. Guys, I can't help think but talk about Virginia. Only 3 losses, and no one in America is really talking about this team. A major game coming up on Saturday, obviously, when they come to Cameron Indoor to play Duke. But then beyond that, they'll be fine in their other games. We'll see what a conference tournament run looks. But, yeah, they've only lost to North Carolina. They lost to Virginia Tech in triple overtime in the first ACC game of the season, and a weird November game early in the season against Butler. I mean, there's another team in the ACC that I don't know where to kind of slot them in this conversation about top of the tournament lines like we're having, but they definitely deserve to be in that conversation.
And that
feels like we're going to learn a lot about Virginia in a second. I mean, they're playing NC State at home on Tuesday. Yeah. Then, of course, they got that road game at Duke. If they split and they lose at Cameron, and you still feel really good about Virginia. Obviously, if they lose both of them, then it's like, oh, maybe it was a little bit of a mirage. But yeah, this team has been extraordinary. I really thought Miami was going to get them in that most recent game on Saturday, and when Virginia pulled that out, it was like, oh, this is maybe a team that needs a little bit more love. Like you said, JJ, they're really good.
And that's the other confusing thing about North Carolina. They are now 3-0 against Duke, Virginia, and Louisville. And they've got losses to SMU, Cal, and Stanford. And it's just like, what is this team? And I think that's part of the difficulty in figuring it out.
Sure.
Well, folks, as much as it pains us to continue the conversation about Charles Bediako likes to put himself in the news right before we record squad shows. So I guess that's what we're going to talk about here. The big man is not giving up, trying once again to get back on Alabama's roster this season. In the words of Elsa, I think it's time for him to let it go. We're going to talk more about that in just a second. But first, folks, today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position that you have to fill is still open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for with the right skills, experience, and location, so that you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed's data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, that's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status that it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. All right, folks, let's continue the Charles Bediako conversation for those of you who missed the update here. Yeah.
before we get into this ridiculousness, can I do something even more ridiculousness?
Do you ever not?
No, never. Here's what I need. I need everyone that's listening to this to go find the YouTube version of it, because you're about to see something incredible for your life. What I need right now is our man, Matt Shonvisky of Locked On UConn. Brother, take off your glasses for me.
What are we doing?
And I need everyone to look at this screen right now.
Oh,
This is Matt. Good group. Okay.
I saw Isaac put that in there, and I've been waiting for the last 20 minutes for this.
Like, let me go big screen. Here's Matt. Here's Eminem.
that is spot on.
Wow.
This is insane, you
Pretty
guys.
remarkable.
That is
When
crazy.
did he get a beard?
Matt, can you give us some bars?
It'd be a shame if UConn lose yourself to a 1 seed. That was too forced. I'm sorry.
Are
do this.
there any postseason
How about
games in
this?
Detroit this
If
year?
UConn wins a title, I'll come on the show and we'll do some barbs.
Yes.
We'll rip
Let's
some
go.
lines.
I am cheering for UConn so hard right now. Let's go.
Matt, surely you've gotten this before. Has anyone brought this
First
to
time.
your attention?
For
No.
real?
'Cause that really does look spot on.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well done.
I guess
Isaac.
we got to transition back to talking about Charles Bediako now.
Hard left turn.
Eminem is
Does-
more important than Charles Bediako right now.
Does
Agreed.
Bediako have
We're not
bars?
going just squad by squad doppelganger.
Right.
Just one by one. I've been
told
told
mine's
that
Coming
Alex
next
Scott.
week.
For those of you who missed this story and are been waiting eagerly to hear this story, Charles Bediako is attempting to appeal to the Alabama Supreme Court to get his eligibility back for Alabama this year. He stayed in school. It's 2 weeks after his motion for preliminary injunction was denied. We're not going to get into all the nitty gritty of it, because if you're listening to the show, you probably have already heard 3, 4, 5, 6 different times about this Charles Bediako story. He is now not only appealing, but he is seeking interim injunctive relief, which basically means I want you to let me play right now while you determine whether my case should be appealed or not. I mean, it's time to let it go, man. Like I said, it's too, come on. What are we really going to do this? Is Nate Oates really going to bring you back to this roster, deal with all of the crap that we had to deal with last time? It just feels like what are we doing? What are we doing? Somebody tell me what we're doing.
It's stories like these that make me concerned about Dan Hurley's future in college, because he's been very, very vocal about where the college game is going, to the point where he even said, "Hey, I'm going to have to at some point look in the mirror and say, am I still coaching college, or am I coaching in the G League? And if it's the G League,
He could have gone to the Lakers. I mean, come on. He
could've
could be
gone to
leading the Lakers.
And here he is sitting here, and there's a potential opportunity that Nate Oates is adding somebody here on February 24th. I mean, it's definitely not something that Darren Hurley is fond of. I know him and Oates get along, they're friends, etc. I know they've been exchanging texts on this topic over the last couple of months. But it's a concerning thing up here in Connecticut, for me at least, just knowing how Darren Hurley's talked about where the college game is going. And if this happens, I think it's a sign that, hey, the college game is changing, and I don't think it's for the better.
Yeah, to your point, Nate Oates and Dan Hurley text thread is something we need to see. I mean, what in the world is this?
How about screenshots? Yeah, let's get some of that up there.
Yeah.
What about the Mick Cronin and Kelvin Sampson Venmo?
Right?
What a hit. The one that was an epic story.
That
Epic
was
story.
fantastic.
I had a person in my comments tonight tell me that we have been the same since he called us poor, and I don't think they were wrong. I don't think they were wrong.
It's kind of like Cincinnati being 4-0 ever since Wes Miller apologized.
Yep.
Find a job, Bediako, or go play basketball.
Yeah,
elsewhere.
Indeed.
This
Indeed
is
sponsored
crazy.
jobs.
Yeah,
Indeed
Right.
sponsored jobs from Charles Bediako.
there's a way to do it.
Drop the locked on reference.
Yeah.
Yes.
Podcast. $75 off. But that's the thing. Podcast.
No, I mean, legitimately though, like, I'm to the point now where I'm like, I feel bad for you, buddy. Like, it's like, it's done. It's over. Like, I want good things for him in life. He's a good basketball player, but like, go find a basketball career overseas somewhere. Like, go, like, find this. This is just, it's too much. It's done. It's over. Stop trying to make fetch happen, Gretchen.
More movie review. I like it. So is the deal here that he wants a degree? Can we just get him a class? Like what's the like?
No,
What's the?
he's already in class. Like, yeah, just keep. Nobody's preventing you from taking classes that Alabama do.
He
Like,
wants a degree.
Yeah, you can do that.
That's the thing that they keep saying. Well, we're gonna do right by him and make sure we uphold his scholarship. It's like that's fine. Get the. I don't. No one cares about that part.
Yeah.
My senior year at KU, I had Drew Gooden in an online class with me. So I think KU should be able to get Drew Gooden back for one final ride.
I mean, did Amari Bailey take his visit, right? Still, even though the Bediako case went the other way.
What? That's a great point, Yox, because like it felt like the Amari Bailey stuff died with the Bediako.
I agree.
And so does that's the thing, this Bediako thing, if it's going to go through, it's going to have far-reaching ramifications for Amari Bailey and others that are going to follow that.
Does anybody have anything else? I mean, like, it just feels like we've covered this story so many times, and I just feel like there's not much more to add.
Matt, are you just getting dumped on with snow right now? Like, it's terrible in the Northeast.
Not as bad as Rhode Island. They got 38 inches, I think, in the last 24 hours.
38?
Got about a foot and a half here. Second time in a couple of weeks we've gotten that. So we're used to it.
That's insanity.
I mean, Kim English, maybe he's going to be happy if he doesn't keep his job, if he's getting 38 inches of snow out there at this point. Folks, that's good. Unless you got anybody's got anything to add, I think we're going to wrap it up here on that note. Obviously, a fantastic week coming up of college basketball games here. Another great weekend here as we're getting closer and closer to March and the start of the conference tournaments. And then, of course, Selection Sunday, just 3 weeks away here. So excited to be finally talking about March basketball very, very soon. That's going to wrap it up for us today, though, folks. So as always, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Cheers to Yox's Mick Bruins. And until next time, peace out.